Good afternoon, guys. We are back to Ali Talks Tech. This is my second podcast, episode 2. And I have today a fantastic guy, a friend of mine who I laughingly call my brother from another mother, Jack Ngare. Jack is currently Microsoft Africa Development Center CEO or Managing Director, whichever title you like to use. Better? Jack, Karibu Studio.
Thank you, Ali. Great that you have me here.
You are very, very welcome, Jack. So, Jack, I always like to start my conversations with a little bit of personal.
Sure.
Who is Jack? Tell us about Jack. Tell us about, what makes you tick, family and stuff. Over to you, Jack.
Yeah, I mean, I think of myself as a tech enthusiast first, with a passion for applying technology to various real-world problems and seeing if they can solve them, both from a enhancement of customer experience, but also reduction of costs, and perhaps ultimately increase in revenue of whichever type of organization I work for.
Family, Jack.
Yeah.
A bit of personal family. Tell us a bit about family.
I grew up in a family of 4 kids. I was the second born. I have an elder brother and 2 younger sisters. And I went through the public education system, right from 844, right from primary school all the way to high school. And then did a small stint in university here. And we'll get to that, I'm sure you'll ask
yes,
me
we will.
why transition. But then, I got an opportunity to go outside the country to study. And then, Kenya kept calling me back in terms of my passion to come back home. And so I came back. And since I came back, I have 3 beautiful children. I have a daughter, 11 years, a son, 6 years, and a second son, 3 years.
3 years. Ah. So you're second born, right?
So I'm a second born.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's something we have in common.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Yes. Great.
Yeah.
Jack, how did you get into tech?
I'd like to say that, when you read a lot of books and you watch a lot of videos of our contemporaries in the West, they say how when they're 11 years old, bought a Sinclair machine or an IBM, I-286 or something along those lines. But we didn't have the opportunities here when we were in Kenya.
Correct.
I mean, right? So you probably touch your first computer as soon as you leave high school. And that was the same case for me. Exactly. Uni, where you meet, people from different walks of life or from the country. And so, at first, to be honest, I didn't quite feel inspired. Like many people would say that this would be something I'd do. I just thought, nice machine. You can play games on it. And that's as far as my passion went. I think it's much later in life when you look around you and you see everything's just going digital. And you're like, if you're like me who's curious, about why things tick and how they make them work, then you realize everything is just simply built through circuit boards. And if you add some intelligence on it, then it wows people. And so I got into it simply because of that curiosity.
How old were you then?
So I think I was probably maybe 19. So then I owned my first actual laptop, I think when I was 20 maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, but before that, I'd, of course, used my friends' laptops and computers. Back then, there were these huge CRT monitors that had a really big, am I allowed to say butt at the back?
You're allowed to say butt.
So they were like...
We're in Africa after all.
Okay, so they were like really big. And so those are the kind of things that we used back then. They were slow. So you do a program and you'd wait for go for coffee and come back. And they're still lighting up. There used to be this CPU light that used to keep flashing at you. And then you could go and come back after 4 hours, and then it says error. So you're like, oh man.
You have to start all over again.
Oh man, you have to start all over again. So those are some of the things that drew me towards computer science field, pretty much technology. My first laptop was a Dell. I wish I kept it because it really did teach me a lot about fundamentals of computer science. And back then, we used to have this technology called Flash. I don't know if you remember Flash Macromedia, and it was the closest it came to doing real graphics.
I remember.
And so you'd study hard.
And I also remember the fact that Apple did not have Flash installed.
No, they didn't. They absolutely didn't. And so, you want to do your coursework on technology, building programs, but just to go and, show your friends how cool you are.
Yes.
You'd build some nice animations on Flash. And then have the people you'll send to say, dude, it doesn't work on my computer. And you say, okay, install this. So those are some of the things that we went through as we were learning how to code.
So, Jack, you and I sort of connected during your time working at Equity Bank. Before I get to your current role as Microsoft ADC Managing Director for Africa, I want to delve a little bit about your time in the financial services sector. From the time you were just, a junior tech executive to the time you rose to actually become a managing director of really the preeminent fintech attached to any bank easily across Africa. Tell us a little bit about that experience and how that shaped you to the person you are today.
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of things in my career, to be honest, happened by happenstance, where I kind of went down the rabbit hole and found a junction, and it was quite interesting to me, looking at it and saying, hey, this is actually something quite interesting, and I went with it. And so when I left the country and went and studied and then came back home.
So what did you study?
So I studied both undergrad and postgrad in computer science.
Computer science.
Yeah, and then I did a second postgrad in business. Simply because when I'd work for BT, British Telecom, and I'd go for meetings, I'm the techie guy, but you see the business guys talking about EBITDA, they talk about, ROI of a project, and you're like...
So for you guys, EBITDA is earnings before interest, tax, and amortization. Something like that. Okay.
Close enough.
Depreciation somewhere in there. Yes. Depreciation and amortization.
So yeah, I mean, you'd see a lot of those guys talk about it, and I'd switch off. And I'm like, dude, ultimately, the tech is great, but you have to figure out the monetization of the tech as well.
Exactly.
I mean, and that's critical. You could build something that's only good for you, but not for everyone else. And so that's why I ended up doing a business degree. So anyway, when I came back, I did some short stints in Stanbic as well as in NIC. I think that for me, they were kind of like very small banks for me. And so I'd find a lot of free time, and which is not why I came back home. I came back home to get something that's quite interesting, engaging.
Okay.
And I wanted to feel like I'm being used. And so it just happened that I joined the Equity group. And at that time, they were actually setting up their MVNO, Equitel. And so, having one conversation with a man I really respect and has done really great things for the country.
Just break down to my audience, MVNO.
So an MVNO is what you call a mobile virtual network operator. So it actually sits on top of a mobile network operator. So in Kenya, you have Safaricom and you have Airtel and Telcom.
Yes.
So they provide
there you forgot Telcom. Huh?
Yeah. You're not gonna take me there. So you have people who build the masts and have give you SIM cards, issue you SIM cards to make your calls, receive your calls, and do other things like data and SMS, etc. And so they built that whole network. Then there's this new paradigm that came into the world that said, hey, these are people who provide the base infrastructure. Maybe we could attract, virtual operators to sit on top of it.
Okay.
And then address certain user segments. They're always driven globally by addressing a certain
specific
niche.
user segments.
Yeah, niche and user segments. So like here, it was a bank that wanted to reduce the cost of mobile financial services, because back then USSD by the major
so rails, as we call them.
Yeah. So I mean, you look at it, and USSD costs at that time, this was in 2014, 15. A USSD, just check your balance, was costing 2 shillings. And look,
what the hell?
Yeah, I mean, 2 shillings, and at that time, a basic wage of a farm worker, a factory worker, or a construction guy is let's say, or girl is 100 shillings. So I mean, will they feed their families, or will they check balances of their phones?
Yes.
And so that particular bank.
So you needed to look for a way to reduce that cost.
The cost of mobile financial services, people access to. So you drive more financial inclusion. And so the bank's main mission was actually bottom of the pyramid banking. I mean, as you know, it Equity Group.
Yes.
That's what they stand for. And so that was one of the main drivers of setting up the mobile virtual network operator. And the idea was that we will build such an efficient system. Your cost because of technology, will be so low that it's negligible that you can give it for free to the consumer.
Okay.
Whereas, other financial services, if you have to download an app, you need bundles. If you have to go to mobile money, you have to pay some transaction charge.
Correct.
For them, it was very clear. These financial services should be free. Again, that.
But is it really free?
Yeah,
Jack?
it's not really free. I mean, there's nothing in the world that's really free.
Correct.
So, but at least the access infrastructure.
So reducing the access to the rails.
Absolutely, and that you can actually make it such a small marginal cost that if you spread over a huge customer base, it ends up in cents rather than in shillings. And so that was the mission.
Okay.
And so when I joined them, I was actually more or less like the GM/CTO for the initiative, and I worked with such brilliant minds there. I mean, people who really digitized, credit in the bank, and to be honest, the bank also benefited some incidental benefits. So as you're putting all financial services onto your SIM card, so in other words, you're pushing the bank, the whole bank at the branch, the Equity Bank.
What
branches.
year was this, Jack?
So this was 20.
Take us a bit back there.
Yeah.
What year?
So we started this off 2014.
2014. Okay.
So you can imagine if you're taking the whole branch and pushing it onto a SIM card.
Yes.
So if you look at any Equity Bank branch then, where people were streaming out of the branches, so you're telling all those people anything you need inside that hall, that banking hall, will be on a small chip in your phone. At that time it was a really huge shift.
What fascinated me about Equity's execution that time was walking into, these Equity cubicles and finding the security guy who was manning the Equity ATMs, also the same guy who would assist guys and show them how to use ATMs. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that, I think the culture back then, and I presume it's the same right now, is that regardless of who you are, whether you're entering as a director or a teller, you had to know the bank's products in and out. And you get even quizzed on it, literally. And you have to go and practice it because there was a program that you have to go and do branch induction for about a month. So even me, when I joined, I chose a branch that I go and work and serve customers in.
Regardless of where you are. Really? Matter. And it still happens today?
I don't know whether it happens today. I've not been there for a while. But,
yes.
but in my days, it happened. I mean, So I went to Kangemi branch. And when I was in Kangemi branch, at end month, the place was full. So for me to be pushed to, for example, work for Equitel, where you translate all that what you've seen with your eyes, because as a tech person, you have to appreciate the world you live in.
User experience.
The user experience, you have to appreciate the problem statement, a real world problem statement, not an imagination you have.
Not something you sit on your computer and think you can code your way out of a problem.
Right.
But Vitukwa ground.
Exactly, Vitukwa ground. So when you see real world problems, and not only that, but taking a step further, don't borrow what you see, let's say a certain fintech is in the States and think it will work in Africa. You have to empathize and go and see it yourself, live it. And that 1 month to me was what, sort of changed my view of how technology.
Your perspectives.
Yes, and so when we're building it and digitizing loans, incidental benefits to the bank as well, that now everything's going to be digitized. It created a strong, bond between me and the teams of what we're trying to achieve. So we built the MVNO. We built it, I think, honestly, maybe 4 months. I mean, it was. I mean, we were really on it.
So, Jack, let me fast forward that from an MVNO to a path towards API bank.
Yeah.
Jenga.
Yeah.
I remember the launch of Jenga.
Yes.
In 2-3 minutes, just how did you start? That path of, SIM cards to APIs.
Yeah. I mean, it's an evolution path, and it's a path wrought with successes, but more importantly, a lot of failures.
Harry would call it experimentation.
Yes.
Would you agree?
The word experimentation would imply that you're trying in a and I could be wrong here, but my interpretation is that you're doing it almost in a sterile lab environment.
Okay.
In terms of experimentation, that's the picture it comes. In chemistry lab, we're experimenting. In my view, I think it's more of let's just do it.
Let's do it. If it fails, it fails. We learn from here and we move forward.
And that was a space we were allowed to have then.
To fail.
That it's okay. You go try. If customers don't pick it up, we've learned something. Iterate to the next product and keep moving.
That's the word. Iterate.
You iterate to the next product. So as much as you're gauged on quarter, I then transitioned to become the managing director for FinServe, which is Equitel and plus all the digital parts of the bank.
Yes.
The system itself at that time allowed you to fail, and it said, look, you're going to experiment a few things. Some things will work, some things will fail,
some won't,
and it's okay. Just make sure that you have at least your basic costs covered, which were with stable businesses, because we had stable businesses at that time. So one of the things that we and I have spoken about a lot is can a fintech be incubated by a bank and succeed? And
don't get me started.
Yeah, I think it depends on what model you utilize.
And what are the thresholds
of success
and failure?
Yeah, so that's an interesting journey from from SIM card to APIs.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you look at the fundamentals of the technology that we're implementing for our customers and the scale we're seeking, you first address an obvious constituent, which is the bank customers through the SIM card, the banking the unbanked, or people who want to
financial inclusion managers.
Financial inclusion. And then you go up the scale. So then after that you head on to the apps, which then address a different customer demographic, the more savvy user who wants to download an app and get a good experience out of it. Then you go up again. There are some of them who are high net worth customers who feel a lot like Ali, who feel a lot more comfortable using retail internet banking on their PCs because they don't want to transfer 20 million on the mobile device.
I wish, man, from your mouth to God's ears.
and then you address. Then you kind of fork out to two different segments.
Yeah.
One, you go to SMEs, and then you go to the corporates. And so I don't think there's any good solution that I've seen so far. And obviously you do a lot of market survey that addresses SMEs, but in the corporate side of things, there are quite a number of good solutions in banks, and we had really good ones that were addressing the corporate business.
What you've just said there is something that I have always talked about. Sorry to interrupt you, Jack, but this is something I'm really passionate about as a business owner. To date, there is no corporate banking solution that addresses the mobile user. Why is that? I have always tried to figure out why my corporate digital banking, because I don't want to call it internet banking, I just want to call it digital banking, does not offer me mobile banking for corporates.
Yeah.
And if it does, it's clunky, it's frustrating, it's throw your phone away kind of experience. Yeah. What's up with that? If
you think about a lot of, and this is just my personal view, and then obviously a lot of your listeners and your viewers are happy. I'm happy for them to disagree with me. Is a lot of the solutions that have been implemented for a lot of the banks are not necessarily homegrown African-grown solutions.
100%.
So if you look at a typical corporate user in Europe and in the US and certain parts of Asia, these are people who believe that it's quite legacy driven. They sit on their computers and that's how they do it.
Yeah.
Whereas for us, we always say we leapfrogged the laptop and the computer and went to mobile first.
Yes.
And so we didn't calibrate our thinking in those regards. The typical financial service provider takes, because you're seeing HSBC and Standard Chartered and so doing corporate banking this way, copy paste the model here without empathizing with what the customer needs. And for us, we are mobile first. So even if you're running a big multinational organization, chances are if you want to prove something, you want to sit on your phone.
100%.
And you move.
100%.
Or even set up even a payroll on your phone. Some people do that because there are also a lot of enterprises that we classify as SMEs, because they're run by one individual or a family or a group of individuals, but their turnover classifies them as corporates. So we didn't do a good job in that area, generally speaking, and that's why an opportunity, if you ask me, for more homegrown solutions that address the real needs for corporates here.
I completely agree with you, Jack, and I think therein lies a huge opportunity. I know you've heard me talk about this quite a lot. Why have we not transitioned from Fuliza, M-Shwari, KCB M-Pesa to offering corporate MSME on mobile solutions? So we are now finding a number of fintechs starting to play in that role. Quite a number of Nigerian fintechs are doing that. Locally, there's Boya, for example, that is starting to look at that space. I think there's an inflection point coming. MSME lending in Africa has a deficit of over $200 billion.
That's correct.
Why do you think that the established incumbents have not offered a solution in that space?
There's such few innovators in financial institutions, legacy type financial institutions, and experimentation, as we talked earlier, is sort of frowned upon. You want tried and tested solutions. So the first question, you'll go in with an SME solution. They'll ask you, where else have you used it? That's the first question you'll be asked.
Okay.
And if you don't have a portfolio, chances are, then you'll be called for a second meeting. And that is probably one of the reasons why some of these things are stunted. I mean, it's difficult to ask an SME banker or a corporate banker who has got a set of KPIs to start experimenting, because maybe doesn't have the bandwidth in the first place to start experimenting with you. And so that's why you find now the fintech space is vibrant with MSME type solutions.
Offerings.
Now, they haven't gotten it 100% right, but you can appreciate the kind of gutsy approach they have to it.
True.
And some are doing a great job, some are maybe not heading in the right direction, but I think ultimately the whole ecosystem is good for it, because out of these learnings, there are people who are working those fintechs who will say, I think that fintech was getting it wrong because of this, and build upon it. And that's the appreciation, generally speaking, Ali, I have for the fintech space, because they are trying new things, and out of it, some good things will come out of it. Okay. So after those solutions, then the natural progression here is that, look, we've digitized a lot of the front end experiences and to an extent the back end experiences. And so what's the next iteration is to say, why don't we let the ecosystem innovate for us?
Nice.
And so you create APIs, and just so long as you cater for regulatory type concerns, KYC, AML, CDD,
KYC, guys.
Customer due
know
diligence.
Your customer. You know these techies and their acronyms. Know your customer.
So there's
AML, anti-money laundering.
And CDD, customer due diligence. Yeah. So those basic things, you take care of those, you're on your merry way to innovate, because you've taken care of basic requirements from the regulator. And that's what I think a lot of fintechs need to understand.
True.
Take care of the basics, and then now go ahead and do what you have to do. Okay, so that's why we came up with the APIs and we released the ecosystem.
So I'm gonna give you a tough one now.
Yeah, please.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how successful do you think FinServ has been in achieving that?
I think by the time I was leaving, so
this was about 3 years ago.
This was about 3 years ago. I'd give them an A for effort, because it was something that was, honestly, with all those guys, you're in a legacy bank, so to speak, and you're trying to do new things, and people are open and receptive to supporting you. And so you have to give that effort there. But having said that, thereafter, you have to say that there's a lot of room for improvement in terms of now actualizing what the intention was.
Honestly, I think it was a gutsy move by Dr. James Mwangi. That culture of can do. Personally, I think that was a great start. I think they're losing it now. I'm not going to put you on carpet on that one, Jack, because I don't think it will be fair to you to do that. I'm going to cover that in another conversation. Sure. And I hope one day I'll have Dr. Mwangi sitting next here. And I hope that we can have a really heart-to-heart, one-on-one, no-holds-bars conversation. I hope so.
Yeah. But on the flip side, there's just the fact that that's where it stopped, or we haven't yet exploited it as much. I think that leaves an opportunity for anyone out there who wants to take advantage of it. Okay. So then I transitioned to Microsoft.
You transitioned to Microsoft. Yeah. And, when you told me you were moving to Microsoft, I scratched my head and I'm like, that's an interesting transition. But also, I think a very gutsy one. Almost 3 years now.
Yeah.
How has the experience been? But I want you to tell my audience, if you can, your interview process. And how did you get to become, out of probably 100 plus candidates, Jack Ngare, CEO or Managing Director at Microsoft ADC.
Yeah, the interview process, to be honest, is quite rigorous. They do want to appreciate what you know. So they have a philosophy they call screen in rather than screen out. So they're not looking to kick you out. They're
Screen in.
They're looking to say, what is this thing that you have that's special, that you will bring into us that we do not currently have, or at least you'll take what we have and take it to another level. And I think that whole paradigm of the way they interview was quite refreshing for me, to be honest. But having said that, they do expect you. Sometimes when you think you've reached a certain point, you think you're kind of like a people manager,
yes,
and you're the guy who gives people what orders to follow. Yes. And they want you to be hands-on. So I remember telling you.
Are you saying coding?
Oh yeah. So there's one interview.
As MD?
There's one.
I thought you left that.
I did. I did. And so I didn't do it as fast as I used to do it back when I was young. But you do have to understand some principles of coding. You have to understand some basic structures of computer science and know how to apply it.
Yes.
And so you have to know that. So my advice is if there are any people who are senior in career and think that you can get away from your technical side,
don't forget that.
Don't forget it. Those fundamentals do count for something when you want to work for. Actually, to be honest, Google, Meta,
all of them,
Microsoft, yes. Amazon, they all appreciate, especially engineering roles. They do want to see that you have an appreciation for that, because that's their business.
And every so often you can get into the guts of a software.
Right, because if you go to a bank interview as a corporate director, you'll, let's say, or an SME banker, and you're a director, they will ask you things with regards to the market. And they'll ask you, how would you structure certain things? So that's your technical expertise.
Although I'll tell them their questions about the market are redundant. That's a story for another day.
Okay. So that's how the interview process goes. Having said that, but it's all pleasant conversations.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Great. So you're now ADC MD.
Yeah.
How's it been? From being the only employee when you joined to now having close to 500 software engineers.
Yeah, there were a couple of employees before me, with all due fairness, maybe about 20 maybe.
Okay.
But the mission that Microsoft came in with is what really attracted me more than anything. They sat down and looked and said, look, we're doing engineering work in the US, in Europe, in Asia, India, China, Israel. But in Africa, where we keep saying the median age is 19, and then it's going to be the workforce of the world by 2040. In other words, the working population for the world will be here in Africa. Wow. Yet we're not doing any investments to build our products there. So we learn the market, we learn how they do, what kind of talent we can seek from there. Correct. So why don't we conscientiously now put our money where our mouth is. And so they set up 2 engineering centers, one in Nairobi, one in Lagos. And the ambition was to hire locals, people who look like me and you, to build Microsoft products we use every day: Windows, Excel, Word, Azure Cloud. And they were serious about it. And so that attracted me, because if that was available to me when I turned 19 in Kenya, maybe I wouldn't have gone.
Else.
Maybe I wouldn't have gone. As I stayed here, would have grown our careers. But so the next generation, it's amazing that they have these opportunities. They don't have to leave Kenya to go and work for a Fortune 500, one of the largest companies in the world. $1 trillion plus market cap. They can be here. And so that attracted me to help them set up and be part of it, part of that journey. And so the ambition again was 300 engineers in Kenya in 3 years. And now we're heading to 500 in 3 years.
So you have bust the banks, basically.
Just testament that if given an opportunity.
That is interesting.
Our young people here, let me just say, no, not young people, our people here will take those opportunities and run.
And run with them. Which brings me to a very controversial conversation. I have fielded enough calls about tech talent being poached by big tech.
Yep.
And I've been very brutal in that conversation. Quite a number of tech startup founders have called me and told me, Ali, talk to your friend. Me, I'm telling you openly now. Yeah. Talk to your friend.
Yeah.
He's stealing our talent. He's I'm trying to find the right word. One of them said, he's creating an imbalance in the market when it comes to salaries. And my point, my answer to them was, guys, retain your talent. We are in a real world situation. You cannot, on one hand, celebrate the fact that Kenya and Africa is now a part of the global tech ecosystem, and still want to have local salaries. What is your answer to that, Jack?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, because I empathize there because as you mentioned, I was running a fintech here,
yes.
Show for Equity Bank.
Yes.
But at the same time, I was getting my engineers poached from me.
Yes.
So I know how it has been working, and I feel for them. What I say is that I think overall as an ecosystem, we have not done enough. And now it's just the consequences that we're reaping of not doing enough in investing in the talent pipeline in this country and across Africa.
That is absolutely.
I mean, the easiest solution we always thought is that we hire one guy who's a developer or two or three, and then the rest of the development, we take it to India. That is a typical scenario of most companies.
Yes.
Most banks, you'd find, or most
that's what they do.
It's either their systems are either built in India or China,
man.
rather than most corporates. And I'm sorry if I'm generalizing it, but most of them are.
But you've been there, so you know.
Yeah, so it's the way it is. Whereas we would, and sometimes for good reason, because we're engaged quarter on quarter. But then that leaves now a deficit, because when real competition comes for talent, then what we all do, we all start scrambling.
Okay.
What I'd say is rather than overpay, because the argument has been overpaying, I think it's more like what you said, right pay. So you pay people through global standards, and then we fix the supply issue that we have right now of the talent pool coming into organizations. And so, I'm heavy right now. I think almost, to be honest, 30% of my time is dedicated purely on talent pipeline, university engagements, tertiary education, high
So you are
schools.
doing the hard work.
So we
So you're not poaching.
Yeah. So in the short term, in the short term,
you're doing both.
in the short term we have to do both.
Okay.
But hopefully we'll get to a point where there's the way you call I'm sorry to use this, but blue collar work like plumber,
Yes.
carpenter.
Yes.
You call and say, hey, I need this work done.
Correct.
I hope this economy gets to a point, if I need a Python developer,
do that.
I just pick up the phone and call someone, hey, I have a Python gig for you. Are you available this time? Yes, they come. And we need to aspire to that situation.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
Jack, we've run out of time. I mean, this is absolutely great conversations. I promise I'll have you back. Guys, there you have it. Ali Talks Tech. Jack Ngare on the hot seat. We really, really appreciate your audience here today, and we look forward to more conversations like this. Thank you very much.